In a quiet photo from 1907, two sisters sit together, looking calm and composed. But there's more to their story. The photo was found in a water-damaged cardboard box that was donated to the Chicago Historical Society. It came from an estate sale on the city's south side. Most of the box's contents were typical: old family photos, street shots, and events like baptisms. Nothing special. But this image caught the eye of David Miller, a senior archivist. He stopped in his tracks while cataloging. In the photo, two young women, probably in their early 20s, sat stiffly in a photo studio. The older sister wore a formal lace blouse with her dark hair pulled tightly back. The younger one had a softer look, her eyes focused on something far beyond the camera, as if she had something on her mind. Their serious expressions weren't unusual for the time. People didn't often smile in portraits back then. Everything seemed standard, until David noticed one odd detail. In the younger sister's lap, partly hidden by her hand, was a folded newspaper. That was strange. Studio photographers were known for keeping portraits clean and simple. Props like newspapers were usually not allowed. David leaned in closer, turning on his desk lamp. Curious, he grabbed his magnifying glass. The title of the newspaper was just barely readable: Chicago Tribune. And under the sister's fingers, part of the headline was visible: Iona Iyer found dead. David's heart started beating faster. He'd spent 15 years studying historical photographs and learned how to spot things that didn't belong. This newspaper wasn't random. It meant something. He flipped the photo over. Written in light pencil were the words: Clara and Rose, March 1907. No last name, no studio name, no address. He quickly pulled up the Tribune archives and searched for major deaths in early 1907. In just a few minutes, he found a story: a railroad tycoon found dead in Lake Michigan, with signs pointing to possible foul play. The date on the article? March 14, 1907. David looked at the photo again. Clara and Rose were clearly posed to include the newspaper on purpose. This wasn't just a portrait. It was a message. That night, David took high-quality scans home. He spread them across the kitchen table to study them more closely. His wife, Angela, a criminal law professor, looked over his shoulder. "What am I looking at?" she asked. He explained. Clara and Rose. This was taken in 1907. But look here. He pointed to the newspaper. Why would they include this in a formal portrait? Angela studied it. Maybe they were reading it before the session? David shook his head. Photographers were strict. Nothing like this would have been allowed unless it was meant to be there. He zoomed in on the digital image. Look at Rose's hand. She's not just holding the paper. She's showing it. Her fingers are set up to show the headline, like it's casual, but it's not. Angela sat down. You think they saw something? David nodded. The man in the article was James Cartwright, a wealthy railroad executive who was found dead near Navy Pier. Authorities ruled it an accidental drowning, but the Tribune suggested otherwise. Then, after about 2 weeks of reporting, the coverage suddenly stopped. No updates. No follow-ups. Someone powerful wanted it buried. Angela said. Exactly. David did more digging. Cartwright had plans to run for governor and was reportedly preparing to take a stand against corruption, unsafe factories, and child labor. Then, just before he could go public, he died. Angela's expression turned serious. And these sisters knew something. David believed so. But instead of going to the police, they chose to hide their message in a photo. In 1907, women had very little legal power, David explained. Their word wouldn't carry much weight, especially against someone rich or influential. If those people knew the sisters saw something, Angela didn't need to say more. David studied their faces again. Clara, the older sister, looked strong and focused. Rose looked scared, as if she was carrying something too heavy for someone her age. They couldn't speak out, David said quietly, so they found another way. Angela encouraged him to find out who they were. All he had was Clara and Rose. No last name. Start with a studio, she suggested. The next morning, David went back to the Historical Society and re-examined the photo, looking for any sign of where it was taken. On the lower right corner, barely visible, he found it wore in embossed lettering, Bergman and Son, State Street. He checked city directories from that time. The Bergman studio had been located at 247 State Street from 1892 to 1911. The building was still there, now a coffee shop. That afternoon, David drove downtown. Inside, the coffee shop's exposed brick walls still showed hints of the old studio. The owner, Patricia, looked up when she saw his badge. "Historical Society," she said. "You're the third person this year asking about this building." David explained he was researching a photo taken in 1907. Two sisters named Clara and Rose. Patricia nodded. "We found some old stuff when we renovated. Most of it was junk, but there were a few glass plate negatives. We gave them to the Chicago Public Library." David's heart jumped. Glass plates were the original negatives, sharper and more detailed than printed photos. At the library, a staff member named Michelle took him to a climate-controlled archive room. "This is the Bergman collection," she said. "We're slowly digitizing them when we get grant money." She brought out boxes, and David began going to plates one by one. There were weddings, portraits, and family photos. Then, finally, he found it, the original negative of Clara and Rose. It was crystal clear, and it revealed something new. Rose wasn't just holding a newspaper. In her other hand, half hidden in her skirt, was a small leather journal. David requested high-resolution scans. When he got the digital files, he zoomed in and could just make out the initials on the journal cover. R.M. Rose M., but what was her last name? He cross-checked the Cartwright case with Chicago Society pages from early 1907, hoping to find a match for sisters named Clara and Rose. Nothing. He checked work records, immigration files, and church registries. Still no luck. Then he remembered. The photo came from a South Side estate sale. He called the estate liquidator, Raymond Kowalski. "The house belonged to the Mororo family," Raymond told him. "Last person living there was Eleanor Mororo. She passed away at 93. No kids. Her relatives just wanted everything cleared out. Did she have any family records?" David asked. "Lots," Raymond said. "Photos, papers, boxes. But one thing stood out. There was a locked metal box nobody could open. The lawyers told us to include it in the donation to your society." David's pulse quickened. Was it sent over? Should have been. David rushed to the donation storage area and began searching. After about 20 minutes, he found it. A small steel lockbox, rusted but intact. With help from the preservation team, he got open. Inside were bundles of letters, some pressed flowers, and at the bottom, a leather journal. The initials on the cover, R.M. Rose Mororo. David's hands shook as he opened it. The first entry was dated January 3rd, 1907. The handwriting was neat and delicate. Clara wrote, "I have to write everything down. If something happens to us, someone needs to know the truth. We were there that night. We saw what they did to Mr. Cartwright, and they saw us watching." David kept reading, each entry from Rose's journal pulling him deeper into their lives. Clara and Rose Mororo worked as seamstresses at a garment factory near the river. Just two of thousands of women working long hours in Chicago's industrial area. An entry dated March 13th, 1907, stood out for its detail. "We stayed late, finishing Mrs. Henderson's order. Clara said we should walk home by the lake to clear our heads. It was close to midnight when we reached the pier. The whole city felt still. All we could hear was the water. Then voices, angry ones. We stopped behind a warehouse wall and saw 3 men on the pier. One of them was James Cartwright. I recognized him from the papers. He was shouting about evidence, saying he'd expose them all. The other 2 men stood in the shadows. One was tall, wearing a nice coat. The other was shorter and stockier. The tall man said something we couldn't catch. Then Mr. Cartwright stepped back and said, "I won't be bought. The workers deserve the truth." Clara grabbed my arm. "I still have the marks." Then it happened. The thick man lunged. There was a fight. Mr. Cartwright was pushed to the edge of the pier. He struggled. Then he went into the water. The splash was loud. The tall man ordered, "Find the documents." Then they left fast, their footsteps echoing across the pier. We ran. Clara pulled me into an alley. And we didn't stop until we reached our boarding house. We locked the door and didn't sleep. Clara kept saying, "We can't tell anyone. They'll kill us. Who would believe 2 factory girls over men like that?" But I can't forget Mr. Cartwright's face just before he fell. He looked right at us. He knew we saw. David leaned back, trying to absorb the weight of what he was reading. These sisters had witnessed a murder, a killing disguised as an accident, and they carried that truth, knowing they could never safely speak it aloud. Back then, women had almost no legal rights. Their voices weren't taken seriously, especially against powerful men. The entries showed how Rose and Clara lived in fear. Just 3 days later, Rose wrote about seeing the thick man, the one who pushed Cartwright, standing near their factory, watching workers as they left. They changed their routes, stopped walking alone, stayed alert. But Clara had a plan. On March 20th, 1907, Rose wrote, "Clara's been researching all week at the public library. She learned about evidence, about leaving records behind. She told me, if we can't speak, we'll write. If something happens to us, someone will find what we left." She made me promise to record every detail, times, faces, words. She's been saving newspaper clippings about Mr. Cartwright. She even went to the Tribune offices and asked for back issues, pretending she was a student studying industrial accidents. Then she came up with something else. She spoke to Mr. Bergman, the photographer, said we wanted a formal portrait to send to our aunt in Boston. But she asked him if we could include personal items in the photo, things that meant something to us. He was confused but said yes. Tomorrow, we go in for the portrait. Clara says, we'll wear our best clothes, look proper and respectable, and we'll put the evidence right in front of them. Maybe one day, someone will see it and ask why. David felt a chill. That photo wasn't just a keepsake. It was a message, a silent alarm sealed in an image. The journal went on. After the portrait session, the tone of Rose's writing grew more tense. She mentioned men asking questions around their boarding house. The factory foreman suddenly became very curious about where they lived and who their family was. April 2nd, 1907. Clara got a letter today. No return address. Just one line. Forget what you saw, or your family in Boston will receive bad news. We have an aunt and 2 little cousins there. Clara went pale. She burned the letter, but I saw her hands shaking. She started hiding copies of everything. The journal pages, the newspaper clippings, even old letters. She said, if they come for us, the truth has to survive. David knew he had to find out who those men were. Rose's journal was rich with clues. Descriptions of the tall man's expensive coat, his commanding tone, how others listened to him. The thick man was the one who had physically attacked Cartwright. David began digging into Chicago's power structure in 1907. Cartwright had been investigating factory owners exploiting immigrant labor, especially in the garment district. In one of the last Tribune articles before his death, he had named several companies. One company stood out, Harrison Industrial Holdings, owned by William Harrison, one of the city's richest men. He had strong ties to City Hall, the police, and even the state legislature. David found a photo of Harrison from 1907. Tall, well-dressed. He matched Rose's description perfectly. Then there was a police captain quoted in the Tribune article about Cartwright's death, Thomas Burke. He had declared it an accidental drowning. David checked Burke's background. He retired in 1910, wealthy, which was odd for a police captain's salary. He was also known for being a solid, muscular man, having walked patrols before becoming an officer. The details matched. Sickeningly well. Back in Rose's journal, her entries were becoming more disjointed, filled with fear. April 15th, 1907. Captain Burke came to the factory today. He spoke to Mr. Gelman, the owner, then walked through the work floor. His eyes scanned every girl's face. When he got to our station, he stopped. You girls been with Gelman long? He asked. Clara answered calmly. 3 years, sir. He nodded. Good. Honest work. Keep your heads down. Chicago's dangerous for people who see things they shouldn't. After he left, Clara's hands were shaking so much she couldn't even thread her needle. We knew what he meant. He was warning us, watching us. Even after 100 years, the fear in Rose's words felt raw and real. Then came May 1907, and everything in the journal began to shift. The entries became more frantic. Clara had started making plans. She reached out to Solomon Hirsch, a rare lawyer who supported laborers. She told him they had information about dangerous conditions in Harrison-owned factories. But not the murder. Not yet. They needed protection first. Hirsch agreed to meet them. Clara had Rose memorize the address and hid journal copies in 3 places: her coat lining, a hymnal at Street Patrick's, and under their floorboard. "If something happens," Clara said, "give these to Mr. Hirsch. He'll know what to do." When Rose asked what she meant, Clara just said, "They've killed before. We have to be smarter than they think." David later found Hirsch's archive papers. In a letter dated May 20th, 1907, Hirsch wrote, "2 young women came to me with a story that could shake the city. They saw what really happened to Cartwright. I've advised them to stay visible, attend church, keep the routines. I'll take their testimony, but we must proceed cautiously." Hirsch believed them. The last journal entries came in June 1907. Rose wrote that federal investigators had been contacted. "Clara says we're doing what's right, but I'm scared. I dreamed it was Clara falling into the river. Clara planned for them to leave Chicago after they testified. Hirsch had a sister in Philadelphia where they could work and stay safe. Just 1 more week." Then, on June 18th, Clara didn't come home. No one saw her after work. Rose waited, terrified. The final journal entry ended with a plea. "Please let her be okay. Please." On June 19th, 1907, the body of a young woman matching Clara's description was found in the river. Ruled a suicide. No investigation. David found one last letter in the lockbox. Dated June 25th, it was from Hirsch to Rose. "Leave Chicago. Don't take anything linking you to your sister. It's the only way you'll survive. Your sister was brave. Her courage should have mattered." David gathered everything and took it to the Chicago Historical Society. They created an exhibit, Witnesses to Injustice. At the center was a photo of Clara and Rose, no longer just a portrait, but a testimony. The hidden journal, the folded newspaper, the look in their eyes. Their truth was finally heard. Sometimes a photograph isn't just an image. Sometimes it's a promise, kept